Money has a way of revealing people's true nature. In my family's case, it took exactly $47 million to show me who my parents really were. My name is Sophia Barrett, and until this morning, I was the family disappointment. The daughter who chose humanitarian work over the family business. The failure who spent her inheritance on building schools in developing countries instead of investing in luxury real estate, like my perfect younger brother, James. The massive oak doors of Harrison and Associates law firm felt heavier than usual as I walked into the conference room for what my parents had called an emergency family meeting. The message had been clear: attendance mandatory, no excuses. I knew what this was about. Grandpa Walter had passed away 3 weeks ago, leaving behind a business empire worth nearly $50 million. The Barrett Construction Company had been his life's work, built from nothing into one of the largest development firms on the East Coast. My parents, dressed in matching black, as if still in mourning, though I'd never seen them shed a real tear for Grandpa, sat at the head of the conference table. James lounged in an expensive suit, scrolling through his phone with affected boredom. "You're late," Mom said sharply, though I was 5 minutes early. "Traffic," I replied simply, taking my seat. Mr. Harrison, Grandpa's personal lawyer for 30 years, sat quietly at the other end of the table, a thick folder in front of him. Something in his expression made me pause. Was that a hint of satisfaction in his eyes? "Let's get this over with," Dad began, straightening his tie. "We all know why we're here. Dad's estate needs to be properly distributed to ensure the company's future success." James finally looked up from his phone. "Shouldn't take long. The company shares go to me, obviously. I'm the only one who's shown any business sense." I thought about the 3 failed ventures he'd launched with Grandpa's money, each one more disastrous than the last. But saying that would only start another argument about my own choices. "Exactly," Mom agreed, patting James's hand. "We need someone who understands the value of money, not someone who throws it away on charity." She spat the last word like it was poison. The memory of our last family dinner flooded back. I'd just returned from opening our 10th school in Rwanda, excited to share the photos of smiling children with their first books. Mom had walked out of the room. Dad had called it a waste of good money. "Which brings us to the point of this meeting," Dad continued. "Your grandfather's estate needs to go to someone who will preserve his legacy, someone who understands business." I sat quietly, wondering what Grandpa would think of this conversation. He'd never said much about my humanitarian work, but I remembered the small smile he'd get whenever I showed him pictures of our projects. "Failures don't deserve inheritance," Dad declared, his voice firm. Mom nodded in agreement, her perfectly manicured nails drumming on the table. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. For the first time, I noticed he was holding back a smile. "Actually," he said, opening the folder, "the trust fund is in your daughter's name." The silence that followed was absolute. James's phone slipped from his hands, clattering on the expensive mahogany table. "That's impossible," Dad spluttered. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Mr. Harrison replied, pulling out a document. "Walter Barrett amended his will 6 months ago. The entire trust fund, including controlling interest in Barrett Construction, is legally transferred to Sophia Barrett." Mom's face had gone pale. James looked like he might be sick. But she'll destroy the company," Dad protested. "She knows nothing about business." Mr. Harrison pulled out another document. Actually, Mr. Barrett specifically cited Sophia's business acumen as a reason for his decision. "Would you like me to read his letter of explanation?" Without waiting for an answer, he began to read. "To my family, if you're hearing this, then the truth I've kept hidden for 5 years is finally coming out. While you all dismissed Sophia's humanitarian work as a waste of money, I was watching as she built an international organization from scratch. Watching as she managed budgets, negotiated with governments, and created sustainable programs that will last generations. What you saw as charity, I saw as the most impressive business achievement in our family's history. Did you know that Sophia's Education Foundation now operates in 12 countries? That it has a higher success rate and lower overhead than any similar organization? That she turned her initial inheritance of $2 million into a $30 million operation through strategic partnerships and brilliant management? No, you didn't know, because you were too busy counting James's real estate failures and calling them learning experiences to notice real success. So yes, I'm leaving everything to my granddaughter. Not because she needs it. She's already proved she can build something meaningful on her own. I'm leaving it to her because she's the only one who understands what I built this company for. It was never about the money. It was about building something that makes the world better. Sophia understood that. The rest of you never did. Mr. Harrison looked up from the letter. Mom had her head in her hands. Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. James was frantically texting, probably to his broker, trying to salvage his latest failing investment. But I sat there, remembering the last time I'd seen Grandpa. He'd visited one of our schools in Ethiopia, watching as children learned to read in a building that bore the Barrett name. Good business, he'd said quietly, builds more than just profits. I hadn't understood then, but I did now. Mr. Harrison pulled out more documents, transfer papers, board appointments, legal authorizations. But I was barely listening. I was thinking about the Barrett Construction Company's vast resources, its international connections, its potential to do more than just build luxury condos. I was thinking about schools, hospitals, sustainable housing projects. I was thinking about good business. And for the first time in years, I smiled at a family meeting. The next morning, I arrived at Barrett Construction's headquarters before sunrise. The security guard did a double take as I used Grandpa's old key card, now mine, to access the executive elevator. "Welcome, Ms. Barrett," he stammered, clearly having received the memo about the company's new owner. Grandpa's office, my office now, was exactly as he left it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city he'd helped build. Awards and photographs lined the walls, telling the story of Barrett Construction's 50-year history. But there was one photo that caught my eye. Hidden behind the more prominent displays was a small frame showing a much younger Grandpa standing in front of a modest schoolhouse. The inscription read, "First Barrett Community Project, 1973. My phone buzzed. Another frantic message from James. "This is insane. You can't run a construction company. You build schools in the middle of nowhere." I smiled, remembering the complex logistics of building those schools. The material sourcing, the local labor coordination, the government negotiations. Each project had been a masterclass in construction management, though my family had never bothered to notice. Mr. Harrison arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying more documents. "The board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m., he said. "Your father is demanding an emergency vote of no confidence." "Let me guess," I replied, settling behind Grandpa's desk. "He's convinced the other board members I'm going to bankrupt the company with my charitable ideas." "Actually," Mr. Harrison smiled, "he's having trouble convincing anyone. Your grandfather spent the last 6 months showing the board your foundation's financial reports. They were quite impressed." At 8:55, I walked into the boardroom. Dad was already there, huddled with his closest allies. Mom sat in the observers section, her usual poise cracking as she watched me take Grandpa's seat at the head of the table. "This is ridiculous," Dad burst out. "She has no experience in real estate development." "No." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the presentation screen. "Let's talk about experience." The first slide appeared, a map showing my foundation's projects across 3 continents. In the past 5 years, I've overseen the construction of 47 buildings in 12 countries. Average project completion time, 4 months. Average budget variance, under 2%. Success rate, 100%. The board members leaned forward, their expressions changing from skeptical to interested. "But those were just simple buildings," James interrupted from the observers section. "Not luxury developments." I clicked to the next slide. "This is our technical training center in Kenya. Built to international standards, incorporating solar power and advanced water recycling systems. Coming in 20% under budget through innovative material sourcing and local partnership programs." More slides followed. Complex construction projects, detailed financial reports, sustainability metrics that made our traditional developments look obsolete. Barrett Construction has always been about more than just luxury condos, I continued. At least, it was when Grandpa started it. I pulled up the photo I'd found in his office, the 1973 schoolhouse. Our company's first project wasn't a high-rise or a shopping mall. It was this, a building that changed lives. That's the legacy I plan to continue. The board sat silently, absorbing my words. Dad looked like he might explode. "But profits," he began, "will increase." I cut in. "Sustainable construction is a $400 billion market. Green building contracts have tripled in the last decade. While we've been building the same luxury condos, our competitors have been innovating." I pulled up one final slide, my 5-year plan for Barrett Construction. Traditional luxury projects balanced with sustainable development, international expansion through my foundation's established networks, government contracts for infrastructure projects. The numbers spoke for themselves. The projected revenue was double our current trajectory. "Your grandfather showed us some of this," one board member said quietly. He was quite proud. Mom stood up suddenly. "This is all very impressive, but you're forgetting something. The Barrett name means something in this city. We have a reputation to maintain." "Yes," I agreed. "A reputation for building things that last, for making a difference. Or have you forgotten what Grandpa always said about good business?" The room fell silent. Everyone in the company knew Walter Barrett's favorite saying, "Build for tomorrow, not just today." Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. "Shall we proceed with the vote?" Dad stood up, straightening his tie. "Before we vote, I have one last thing to say." He turned to face the board. "My daughter may have impressive charts and fancy international projects, but she lacks the one thing this company needs: loyalty to the Barrett way of doing things." I thought about the children in our schools, the communities transformed by our projects, the Barrett name becoming synonymous with positive change. "You're right, Dad," I said quietly. "I'm not loyal to your way of doing things. I'm loyal to Grandpa's original vision, to building things that matter." The vote wasn't even close. The board's support was unanimous, save for Dad's single opposing vote. As the meeting adjourned, I caught Mom wiping away what looked suspiciously like a real tear. James stood in the corner, finally seeing his sister clearly for the first time. But it was Dad's expression that struck me most, a mixture of anger, confusion, and something else. Something that looked almost like pride. Mr. Harrison gathered his papers, pausing at my chair. "Your grandfather left one more thing for you. Said to give it to you after the board meeting." He handed me an envelope, old, yellowed, sealed with the Barrett Construction logo. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photo showed Grandpa and me at one of my first school openings in Tanzania. He was looking not at the camera, but at me, his expression full of quiet pride. The note read, "Dear Sophia, they called you a failure because they couldn't see what you were really building. But I saw it, and now everyone else will too. Love, Grandpa." I tucked the note into my jacket pocket, next to my heart, and turned to face my new company. It was time to start building. 1 year can change everything. I stood on the rooftop of our latest project, a mixed-use development in downtown Boston that combined luxury apartments with affordable housing and a community education center. Solar panels glinted in the morning sun, and the rooftop garden was beginning to bloom. "The press is ready," my assistant Sarah announced, "and your family just arrived." Today was Barrett Construction's 50th anniversary celebration, coinciding with the grand opening of what we dubbed the Barrett Legacy Project. It was also exactly 1 year since that fateful meeting where Grandpa's will had changed everything. The elevator opened, and my parents stepped out. Dad looked different, the proud swagger replaced by something more genuine. Mom's designer outfit was as perfect as ever, but her smile seemed real for once. Behind them came James, carrying his daughter Emma. My niece was wearing a Future Builder t-shirt from our new youth education program. "Quite a view," Dad said quietly, looking out over the city. "Your grandfather would have loved this." He was right. From up here, you could see 3 generations of Barrett buildings. The old office towers Grandpa had built, Dad's luxury condos, and now my vision of what construction could be: sustainable, inclusive, purposeful. The past year hadn't been easy. Dad had fought me at first, trying to undermine my authority with old business partners. Mom had made tearful appeals about preserving the family's reputation. James had threatened to sue, convinced I would destroy his inheritance. But then something unexpected happened. Results. Our first quarter under my leadership showed a 40% increase in profits, driven by government contracts for sustainable infrastructure projects. My international connections brought in partnerships that opened new markets. The Barrett name became associated with innovation, not just luxury. "Ms. Barrett?" Sarah appeared again. "They're ready for the ceremony." I followed my family down to the plaza where hundreds of people had gathered. Employees, investors, community members, and a group of children from our education program, all here to celebrate what Barrett Construction had become. As I took the podium, I saw familiar faces in the crowd. The project manager who doubted me at first, but now led our sustainable building division. The local politicians who had opposed our mixed-income housing plan until they saw the results. The international partners who'd helped us expand into green construction markets across 3 continents. 50 years ago, my grandfather built his first project, a simple schoolhouse that changed lives. Today, Barrett Construction continues that legacy on a global scale. I gestured to the building behind me. This isn't just another development. It's a blueprint for the future. Luxury apartments that subsidize affordable housing, a community center that offers technical training, solar power that reduces costs for all residents. This is what happens when we build for tomorrow, not just today. The crowd applauded, but I wasn't finished. Some of you know that a year ago, my grandfather made a controversial decision. He left his company to someone many considered a failure. I paused, meeting my parents' eyes. He saw something others didn't, that success isn't measured by how much we build, but by what we build for. Mom was crying now. Real tears this time. James held Emma tighter. In the past year, Barrett Construction has built 23 sustainable developments, 15 community centers, and partnered on infrastructure projects in 8 countries. Our profits have doubled. Our workforce has tripled. But more importantly, we've returned to our roots, building things that matter. I revealed the plaque we'd be mounting in the lobby. The Walter Barrett Community Center, it read, with Grandpa's photo and his favorite quote, "Build for tomorrow, not just today." And now, I continued, I'd like to announce our next chapter. The screens behind me lit up with renderings of our newest initiative, the Barrett Foundation for Sustainable Development, a $1 billion commitment to green building technology, community-focused construction, and technical education programs. But I won't be leading this initiative alone, I said, watching my family's expressions. Because true legacy isn't about one person's vision, it's about bringing people together. I gestured to James. My brother will head our new technical education division, using his experience to help others learn from both success and failure. James straightened, surprise and gratitude in his eyes. Emma clapped excitedly. My father will lead our community relations team, bringing decades of local knowledge to our development projects. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he nodded. And my mother will direct our philanthropic partnerships, combining her social connections with true purpose. Mom's perfect makeup was streaked with tears, but her smile was radiant. Because that's what Grandpa really left us, I concluded. Not just a company or a fortune, but a challenge. To build something bigger than ourselves. To turn success into significance. To prove that good business and good works can go hand in hand. The applause was thunderous, but I'd barely heard it. I was watching my family. Really watching them. Dad's pride was no longer about status, but about impact. Mom's social circle was becoming a force for change. James was teaching Emma that true success means lifting others up. Later, as the celebration continued, I found myself back on the rooftop. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold. In the garden, Emma was helping plant new seedlings, supervised by James. Your grandfather was right, Dad said, joining me at the railing. About everything. Even about me being a failure. I teased. He shook his head. You never were. We just failed to see what you were building. Mom appeared with coffee, not her usual expensive latte, but simple cups from the community center's training cafe. To think, she mused, all those years we worried about the Barrett legacy, and you were building it all along. I took out Grandpa's old photo, the one from my first school project. Now it hung in my office alongside pictures of our new developments. A reminder that every great achievement starts with a simple decision to build something that matters. You know what Grandpa told me once, I said, watching Emma learn about rooftop gardens from her father. He said success isn't inherited, it's built. One day, one project, one life at a time. The city stretched out before us, filled with buildings bearing our name. But now they stood for something more than luxury or profit. They stood for possibility, for community, for change. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't in proving others wrong. It's in showing them a better way to be right. And sometimes, what looks like failure to some is actually the foundation of something far greater than success. The sun set on our celebration, but I knew tomorrow would bring new projects, new challenges, new opportunities to build something meaningful. After all, that's what Barretts do. We build for tomorrow.